course, Bob, we really are grateful to have you in studio. And, you know, after the results on Monday, you know, the question was 23 billion shillings. What are you going to do with that money?
The thing about 23 billion shillings is that many people don't even know how to write 23 billion shillings. You know, you don't know how many zeros
how many zeros it has, yes.
It's 9, actually. But, you know, you just break it back down a little bit. You know, what does that mean? What does it mean to the ordinary Kenyan? Well, 6.6 billion is coming back to the government as a shareholder, as a very large shareholder. But you know, we try to move away from those numbers, and I know the headline numbers sounds interesting, but we try to kind of get ourselves very focused on what it is we set out to do. And you know, we always say we just try to transform lives. And you know, if you look at how much money we've spent on things like hospitals and dams and boreholes and that kind of stuff. So I think that's actually much more interesting than the 23 billion.
Of course, we'll get into the questions in just a moment, but interesting points Michael has raised there, and of course we are trying to include our audience as much as possible into this conversation with you. And have you thought of going into other markets outside of Kenya?
We've looked at it, and you know, I think the viewer suggested Ethiopia, but Ethiopia has been very clear that they're not open for business, not for banking, and not for telecommunications. I think when they do open, then we might look at it. It's a very exciting market. It has a single player, and it's a very big market. And you know, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia visited us, I think last year. Actually came to see us in the office, and we outlined the impact of things like MPESA is making, and he was quite excited about it. But you know, they'll make a decision in the right time.
The issue of the stocks is also something that I got online immediately. I talked about Bob Collymore coming into studio today, and of course, you know, there's a 47 cents per share after Monday's announcements. Some people saying that's a bit too little. What can you tell them?
Yeah, so you know, we look at how much profit we make, and then we figure out how much of that you would give back to the shareholders, and how much you would keep for investments. Now there's some stuff that we still need to invest in. We still need to invest in LTE. We're still rolling out our optical fiber network. You see, been digging the roads up, and you know, now there is the potential national police project that also needs funding. So we have to keep a little bit back, and we make a management judgment about how much we need to just hang back and how much we should give back to the shareholders. But 47%, you know, it's a big growth on last year's.
True. I'd like to talk about the securities story as well, but I'm just wondering, still staying with the stock you know, there was a talk about the consolidation of the 40 million shares a few years ago, which we haven't heard of again. Is that still the plan?
No, it's not. I mean, I think we're talking about consolidation when the price was down on the floor. So when the price was at 290, I think was the lowest when I was here, people were saying, well, you know, how do we consolidate this? And consolidating means, you know, you turn every 10 shares into 1 share. But actually it would make no difference to the shareholder. And now that people have got their money back effectively, the share price today is about 12.80, I think, when they paid perhaps 5. You know, people are kind of comfortable now.
So did you meet the president today? That's what the papers said.
Well, I think that's what the president said. Actually, I saw him tweeting, and so there's damning evidence. There's damning evidence that I did meet the president.
So we can talk about it in just a moment.
We can touch on it.
Okay. So we will be back with more after this short break. Don't go too far. Continuing a conversation with Safaricom CEO Bob Collymore, and you know, what we were saying earlier is that Safaricom has gone beyond just being a commercial company to something that has actually changed the lives of Kenyans, from, you know, MPESA and etc. And we sought to find out some views from Kenyans, just, you know, what they feel about MPESA and Safaricom as a whole. We can play that at this point.
I don't see the reason as to why you should send 500 shillings and then somebody receiving it with 27 shillings and you're sending with something like the 17 shillings. That is, the charges are high.
They are moderate. They are not that high, they are not that low.
Na tuma tuseme 1000 inakukata 30 shillings. Hizi 30 shillings mtu akitumania SMS is the same SMS itapokea na 1 bob. Why should it not be 1 bob?
In fact, tuseme kama ni 100 maybe umeishiwa mahali, hiyo pesa wanachaji ni mingi.
So the cost of transferring money, of course, seems to be quite an issue to some of the people that we spoke with. And they want the cost of M-PESA to be reduced. Is that something that M-PESA, I mean, that Safaricom is open to? And of course, there's the issue of the excise tax, which we understand, and you had to transfer the cost to us as consumers. But is cost of M-PESA transactions going to go down at all?
Yeah, I think it's something we're always looking at, particularly for the smaller transactions. I think if you're transacting, people like you, 70,000 shillings, it's a relatively small percentage. But for the ordinary Mwananchi or even the Mashinani, it's a big percentage, and we're constantly looking at ways of reducing that. And so, we will see what we do this year for sure.
Yeah, we're actually looking at it in the office this afternoon, and we had, I think it was it's only 10 shillings that you get, about 10 shillings to transfer that. And my boss was telling me, maybe they're doing that to cap the number of people just sending small amounts of money. But say 100 shillings to 500 shillings, can it be free?
Nothing in life is free. And, we've seen people who've offered free things and then they've got a business. And I know that, if you did some more Vox Pops, people would be telling you that the call rates are too high. But if we reduce the call rates to the same rates as other people, we'll be performing the same way as them, which is actually not good. We've been investing quite a lot of money, and you can only do that if it's a profitable company.
All right. Now, when M-PESA goes down, of course, billions of shillings is held in limbo, and there's a risk of whatever can happen financially to the system. Would Safaricom entertain a discussion towards having sort of a clearinghouse such that even if M-PESA is down, people can still access their payments in one way or another?
So the M-PESA reliability has improved a lot. So we've had a 20% reduction in those outages, but it's still not acceptable when you get outages, and I hate it. This is why we're bringing the new platform in, and once that comes in, it's going to become much more reliable than it is today. Having said that, no one has ever lost any money, and we do have contingency plans that if we have a prolonged outage, how people will get their money back. So it's always safe. There's no issues around that.
I'm told that we have some questions coming through from Twitter. They are coming up just now. There we go. From @Peter Ashura, please, Bob, comment about the quality of voice calls, which is still not standard. And then we've got @K Chassis saying, why do you charge 4 bob within network while your competitors charge half of that even across networks?
Okay, so let me answer the first question.
Wait, there's one more question. A question to Bob. Is it possible to customize SIM cards to headsets to reduce phone theft?
Yeah, I think that last one, they'll just steal your headsets instead of the phone, if I understand the question well enough. And unfortunately, phone theft, I mean, the incidents are just far too high, and we work with the police to try and reduce that as much as we can. Now, as far as the call cost, again, I come back to this answer, that I could charge the same as the competitors. And we've seen at least one competitor who has said call rates are too low and therefore they are selling their business. And so, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. If I reduce the rates, then I'll go the same way as the others. And the other one on voice calls, now that's a serious one, because especially in Nairobi, we have seen, in data, we've seen a doubling of data, and we've seen 30% more calls or voice traffic over the past 12 months. And so how do you solve that? Well, you solve that by either putting up more towers, and the problem with towers is that in a city center there's no place to put the towers. So the next answer is spectrum, and that's why you'd have heard us talk quite a bit about spectrum over the past few months or so. We do need some more spectrum in order to make that thing better. But I do accept, and I make no excuses, the drop call rates are not acceptable, particularly in the CBD, particularly in Nairobi. If you go to Mombasa, it's not so bad, or Eldoret. But the drop call rates are too high, and we are putting a lot of effort now in getting that fixed over the next couple of months or so. And we've got a plan.
Okay. So we've got new technology coming up, every day, now WhatsApp, Viber. And I was shocked to see that despite that, your SMS, revenue from SMS actually went up just over 30%. What is your view of what direction SMS is going to take given that space?
So, people aren't asking for WhatsApp. They're not saying, please, can you give me WhatsApp? What they're saying is that I want to do instant messaging. Now, SMS is not used as instant messaging in many countries because it's too expensive. If you go to the UK, it's going to cost you 15 pence per SMS, whereas here it's about a shilling. And actually, if you buy the bundles, you can buy a bundle for 10 shillings, you can get 200 SMSs. And so what we've done is we've priced it in a way that people use SMS for that instant messaging kind of interaction. The other thing for WhatsApp is you do need to have a smartphone, and we've got about 1.9 million smartphones out of 21 million customers, so the penetration isn't that high. But what we wanted to keep doing is to anticipate what the customers need rather than trying to get them the product. And as I said, by the time we get to a 50 or 60% penetration of smartphones, maybe WhatsApp would have been dead and something else would have come in its place.
Would you be tempted to innovate?
Would we be tempted to innovate? We are actually, somebody rated us the other day as the 5th most innovative company in the world, which is something for Kenyans to be very proud of. So we do actually drive that innovation. One of our strategic pillars is we call it staying ahead of the curve, is to continue to innovate. But when we innovate, we don't innovate just to be clever. We innovate to make sure that it meets a need. Now, I'll give you an example. People talk about MPESA. A lot of countries come here and they say, how can we take MPESA to our country? And my answer to them is always, well, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Whereas MPESA was solving a problem that we had in Kenya, and now it's diversified and doing lots of stuff. So Lipa na MPESA, you got 122,000 merchants who are currently accepting it, and that has actually taken the place of cash now. So we innovate to meet a need rather than innovate to look clever. You look at me, you can tell that we clearly don't set out to look clever.
I was just reading an article this afternoon that said about 60% of Safaricom's future, so to speak, depends on mobile money. Do you agree with that sentiment?
No, I mean, people make those numbers up, and I think they tend to be analysts. At the moment, mobile money is taking about 18% of our revenue, or delivering 18% of the revenue, and that will grow a little bit more. But you can't mortgage a company on mobile money. We're not just a one-trick pony. Our company fundamentally, more than 60% of our revenues is coming from voice. And when many countries around the world say the voice is dead, and actually you can see the declining revenues coming from voice, it's growing. It grew by 11% in our company. And why is it growing? It's growing because there are more people coming into the market who wants to talk. There's about 1 million young people who are achieving the age of adulthood every year, which means roughly 1 million people are coming into the market. And so there's a lot of market still left for voice, and data is also going to be a massive. We've grown by 40% for the 2nd year running. And so there's the future. I mean, mobile money is important, and see everybody's running to this mobile money thing at the moment. But we have lots of other stuff that's
So do you expect the same trend, say next year, over the next 5 years, data, voice, mobile money? Do you expect the same trend that we've been seeing with Safaricom?
Yeah, so the growth that you've seen on voice, which is about 11-12% year on year, that will continue. I think that we're not anywhere near plateauing. Data, I call it, either a hockey stick, the way a hockey stick goes and then suddenly pops up. Yeah. But we're now on that hockey stick where the growth
on data.
SMS, we're taking about. I know the Director General talked just now about dominance, but we're taking about 98% of all SMSs that are sent in this country are sent on the Safaricom network.
On that point, he did mention that dominance is not wrong, but abuse of dominance is wrong.
Correct.
So you have 98% of the market. Could there be a chance that you are not ready to change anything about SMS costs because you, after all, command 98% of the market?
No, because if you look at our SMS pricing, I think the viewer just now talked about a shilling a minute. Actually, our SMSs, for 10 shillings, you get 200 SMSs. That's as cheap as almost free.
So tell me though, what does the entry of players such as Equity Bank and this new mobile virtual network operators mean for a company such as Safaricom?
Well, I haven't seen what Equity Bank is doing. All I know is that they've got an MVNO.
And they are partnering with Airtel?
They're partnering with Airtel. And I think that the market does need competitors. Contrary to many people's opinion, we don't want to dominate and we don't want to be the only player in the market. That's not healthy. And so it's great to see other players coming into the market. But I think we wait and see what the equity proposition is. The market is plenty big enough. When we play in the mobile space, 98% of all transactions in Kenya, and actually large parts of the world, is cash-based. Right. So what M-PESA tries to do is it tries to replace cash. And so there's another 98% to go for. And that means that, Equity Bank and lots of other people can come into this market. But an interesting thing about Kenya is that Kenyans have now accepted this paradigm, this way of paying using your mobile phone. Which is not done anywhere else in the world. And so I think that people using mobile phones to pay for transactions, it's not just going to be about Safaricom, it's going to be lots of others. So it's good news.
So just before we wind up, so you met the president today?
Yes.
What did you talk about?
Well, I think he says shuffling in his seat. I think the common courtesy is not to discuss what you discuss with the president. I think I saw the tweet.
But he tweeted.
Yes, this
so it's pretty common knowledge.
With this modern presidency, this digital presidency, is that before you know what's happened, it's on Twitter.
Yeah.
The press release has come out, and Safaricom has been awarded a tender for the provision of a communication service for the National Police Service. I think clearly we have the capabilities of doing it, and we will be building out an entire network for them. But beyond that, I think national security is not something that you necessarily discuss on national TV.
True.
But we're pleased to be playing our role in helping with the security challenges we have.
All right. I know I said we're winding up, but is ESSA still on your plate?
That's a very unfortunate analogy because we certainly don't eat our competitors. But we...
the figure of speech, Mr. Collymore.
Well, the Director General for Competition is still here. We had applied to the Communication Authority for approval before it would be referred to the Competition Authority, and there's some conditions which came back, and we're still mulling that over, but we need to get an alignment between the other partner, who's Airtel, and if the three of us can be aligned, then we'll go ahead. If we can't get alignment, then I think it wouldn't. The really important thing and interesting thing for us was the spectrum. Remember we talked about the congestion challenges we have, and so that's why we needed it. But there's a price that you're prepared to pay, and there's a price you're not prepared to pay.
All right.
But we don't eat our competitors.
Figure of speech, Mr. Collymore. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I know you're probably running out of time. It's interesting that we don't spend enough time talking about some of the other stuff that's doing. One of the things that we will be announcing soon is we will be spending about 2.5 billion shillings on building a school, which will be a state-of-the-art, best in Africa and probably best in the world kind of school. So these are the things which is actually making a big difference to the community that we live. The 23 billion shillings, it's
big money is always big news. For us, at least. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, on that note, we wind up our one-on-one with Safaricom CEO Bob Collymore.